Hello, my name is Ian and I am an accessibility specialist and also Tara's co-conspirator for the next couple of days. So I'm going to kick today off in the way that we always do, with a bit of a look at the state of the industry through a recap of some of the interesting things that have been happening over the past year. The past year has been quite a year for all of us, and it has affected the games industry. There are a whole bunch of really nice initiatives that I have seen either postponed or cancelled because of both the economic impact and the organisational impact that the virus has had on companies and organisations throughout the industry. And one way in which that has been felt has been through the charitable sector. This isn't something that's unique to the games industry. Charities across the board have been having a hard time recently, and it's because of missing out on the usual, face-to-face fundraising activities. So these are a few of the charities working in the gaming and disability space: Able Gamers, Special Effect, Warfighter Engaged, Everyone Can, Lifelights, NMA Gaming, Cap Game, Handy Gamers, Stack Up, Child's Play, Get Well Gamers, The Rockin' R. This isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but these organisations and organisations like them all do fantastic work. The industry itself would not be where it is today without them, and the gaming community would not be where it is today without them. So if it is within your means to help these people out, donate to these organisations and contribute to them to be able to continue to do the work they do, then please do. It really is the hour of need. But despite the impact that the virus has had, there has still been a bunch of nice progress, and the pace of change has continued to accelerate. So I'm going to give you an overview of a few of the different areas in which this has been felt. Starting with hardware. There's been some nice progress over the last year in terms of input devices. Like this. This is the 3D Rudder, which is a foot-controlled input device used for gaming and VR. And what you're looking at is a new version of it, which is the 1-foot version. So you can see that it has attachments and straps to attach a single foot. So you can operate VR, navigate game environments just using a single foot. Next up, this is an adapter for the PlayStation 4 controller. This launched, I think, towards the end of last year. And this is actually a first-party accessory developed directly by PlayStation. And it adds 2 extra remappable buttons to the underside of the device. This isn't something for developers to use. This doesn't add extra buttons to the controller. It adds alternative buttons to the controller. So this is for players to use. So for example, if you have difficulty clicking the sticks in, or the triggers are too hard to reach around to, you can remap those inputs onto the underside of the controller instead. And this allows that added flexibility for a cost of $30, which is really nice to see. Next, we have the Freedom Wing adapter. The Freedom Wing adapter is a collaboration between AT Makers and Able Gamers, and Steve Spon of Able Gamers particularly. This is his baby. So this is an adapter to allow you to use the joystick of a powered wheelchair as a game controller. So what you're looking at here is actually Steve's chair. At the top, he is using the joystick on his chair. That is routing through to the green box, which is the Freedom Wing. That in turn passing through to the Xbox Adaptive Controller, where it can be recognised as a HID compliant joystick. And through that, he is playing Rocket League using the joystick that's part of his powered chair. And next up, this really blew my mind when this hit. This is the Logitech Adaptive Gaming Kit. And what you're looking at here is a bunch of accessibility switches with an adaptive controller in the background. Accessibility switches were my initial route into accessibility. What they basically are is alternative devices used by people who can't operate traditional input devices like a mouse, a keyboard or controller. And all they are is just a 3.5mm mini jack on one end, and on the other end, just anything at all that sends a simple on, off or open, closed signal. And that can be anything. It can be like a button mounted on the wheelchair headrest. It could be a foot pedal, it could be a tube to blow into, anything at all. So it's a really, really simple system that has really powerful implications and applications. But they're expensive. They start at about $25–30 for a single button, and increasing price very quickly from there. So if you are hooking these switches up to an adaptive controller, because that's basically what an adaptive controller is a switch interface to plug these things into. If you are someone who needs to build a fully bespoke setup, that can get really expensive. Enter Logitech. So Logitech brought out this adaptive gaming kit. It consists of a dozen or so switches of different types and sizes and configurations, together with boards to mount them on as well, and all to really, really nice, like high, well-tested build quality. And they released this for $100. So that is an incredible reduction in price compared to paying like $30 plus for a single button. And once you combine that with the adaptive controller itself, before the adaptive controller came around, the closest equivalent to that cost about $400, and that sold for $100. So this is really by like some big magnitudes that prices are coming down. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Assistive technology across the board, including for gaming, is still really, really expensive, but this slices a massive chunk off that price, and in doing so is a really, really valuable democratization of access to this kind of accessibility technology. Platforms and middleware. Now, platforms, we are at an exciting turning point because we have the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and X about to hit. The previous console generation, with the Switch, with the Xbox One, with the PS4, that's when we started to see, for the first time really, decent accessibility functionality within consoles, within the console operating systems. And those features came in part the way through that generation. When that was happening, back around like 2015 or so, back then, like 5 years ago, the current generation, the PS5, the Xbox Series S and X, we're in the early stage of development. So what we're going to see now is the results of the first time ever really that companies are developing platforms from scratch in an environment where accessibility was part of the awareness and part of the culture from the early stages of development. Whether or not that's being acted on, we don't yet know. There have been close to, not quite, there's been a couple of little things, but close to zero information yet about what accessibility might or might not be present on those devices. But I'm hopeful. There's certainly a ton of potential. But because everyone's gearing up for the new platforms, there hasn't been so much focus on the current ones. There have still been some nice things though, like this. This is button remapping functionality at system level on the Nintendo Switch. This is something people have been calling for so long, and it is in place, and it is really nice. Just the same as when the Switch implemented their system level zoom functionality. It's clear that when Nintendo applies themselves to this kind of stuff, they can do a really good job of it. This is really nice, really flexible, powerful. You can set up the console to work just using a single Joy-Con. It's really nice. But strong caveat, this kind of functionality at system level, whether it's on the Switch, whether it's the existing stuff on the Xbox and the PlayStation, it is not a substitute for in-game remapping. In-game remapping is much, much better. This is for use for players. It's not as a fallback for developers to rely on. So please, if you're watching this and you're a developer and thinking, oh amazing, this is taken care of, it's really, really not. You need to be thinking about accessibility in your games, remapping in your games at game level as well. This was another nice example. This hit in, I believe, the February update to the Xbox OS. This is the ability to change where notifications are displayed. This may seem like a fairly trivial thing, but these notifications, by that's stuff like when you get a thing pop up to tell you you've hit an achievement or one of your friends is online, that kind of stuff. Where they appeared before was at the bottom in the middle, which is where subtitles are. So being able to shift those out of the way is going to make an incredible difference to the experience of so many players. And this for me, out of anything in this presentation, out of anything this year, really, this has been the big news for me. This was a Reddit Ask Me Anything session with Stadia, and Stadia announced that they had been working on certification requirements for accessibility. So requirements that every developer who wants to release a game on Stadia has to comply with. So there is mandatory base level of accessibility across Stadia games. This is huge. The last time there was really anything like this was back in the days of the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn actually had a couple of certification requirements that were relevant to accessibility, and you'll hear a bit more about those tomorrow afternoon. But apart from that, it's been a long time since there's been anything like this, and it's going to have wide scale implications. I mean, obviously there is implications for the games released on Stadia. Often those games are going to be cross-platform, so what is implemented for Stadia is also going to show up on those other platforms as well. And there's also the indirect benefit of the way that innovations like these drive the conversation. So whether or not it's acted on is a different matter. We'll soon find out, I guess, but I would be astounded if this development didn't at least inspire some new conversation about this issue with other platforms as well. And there's been progress in the tools that developers have available to them as well. Like this is Unity's new input system. This has been in the works for years, and it finally made it to life. And basically what this does, amongst other things, is it abstracts out your inputs from your actions, which basically means that it's much easier than it used to be to implement remapping in your games just out of the box with Unity without having to use a third-party tool. So this system could still be better. They are looking for feedback. Unity are generally asking for feedback on accessibility across the board. There are people from Unity who are taking part in the conference and who will be around the Discord, so hit them up, they want to hear from you. Something else that they've been working on, Unity and Unreal have been working on, is cross-platform native screen reader support. So that means taking the UI system, the text in that UI system, so like the labels and buttons, those kind of things, and also extra metadata like this is a button, this is a scroll bar, this kind of stuff, and passing that out to the operating system. From there it can then be passed out to the text-to-speech software that blind people and people with low vision use to access their technology. This is huge. There are legal requirements now for a number of games that are considering communication accessibility to implement this kind of stuff. And obviously everyone should be doing it just to give their players a good experience anyway. So there have been a whole bunch of games that have been implementing text-to-speech voice menus, but up to this point it has been like bespoke internal systems, which you'll hear a bit about tomorrow, or interfacing with like basic API, text-to-speech APIs. Now it's starting to change. So of the two, Unreal is actually further along. Unreal have actually released their screen reader support. It's not a full release, it's an experimental preview build. So it's not quite as robust as they want it. They don't recommend it using it for production yet, but it is function enough that it is out there in a game now. So this is the Halo Master Chief Collection. They have integrated it. So Halo Master Chief Collection, all its menus are fully voiced, and that is communicated directly through the screen readers that blind people already have on their computers. Information. So information, I'm covering two kinds of information here. One is information for players and the other is information for developers. I'm going to start with developers. There's been a whole bunch of really nice new resources on accessibility hit over the past year, and this is one of them. So caniplaythat.com is a really lovely resource on accessibility, aimed primarily at players, so it's reviewing games for accessibility and letting people make informed purchase decisions. But based on personal experience and also the experience of reviewing these games, seeing the kind of barriers people encounter and the kind of solutions that are available to them, they've actually produced these accessibility reference guides now as well. So this is specifically for developers to use to learn about how to improve accessibility in their games. So I'm not actually sharing the URLs for these things in this presentation. They're all easily Googleable, but if you do want a direct link, just hit me up in the chat window to the side or in Discord afterwards, or drop me an email and I'll send you all the links. Next up, APX. This is Able Gamers Accessibility Bootcamp. So it's like a 2-day crash course on accessibility. This has actually been around for a while. The training is really popular, but it can be expensive. So what they have now announced is the D-Pad initiative. So this means that anytime they run one of their group sessions, whether that is, as in the image here, in-person session, or as it has been more recently, online sessions, there are a few seats in every session reserved specifically for marginalised developers. So you can apply for one of those seats, and those seats are given away completely for free. And here's another resource. What you're looking at here is Brandon Hand of Xbox in cartoon form. This is a series of accessibility tutorial videos that are published through the Microsoft Enable YouTube channel. And I think it's up to about 7 or 8 of them now. They're really, really nice. These animated shorts, each focusing on a specific area of accessibility. They're about 1.5 to 2 minutes each. Nice condensed bites of information, really well communicated. Definitely check these out. And something else from Xbox to check out as well is the Xbox Accessibility Guidelines. This is actually something, again, that's been around for a little while. This is an internal resource used by Xbox's own game studios, the results of which you've seen in a number of their recent games. What Xbox have now done is given this away publicly. So this is freely available on the Microsoft website for other developers to use in their own games. Again, similarly to the videos, it's a really nice balance of breadth and depth of content, so I definitely recommend checking these out as well. So on to information for players. So this year saw the launch of Game Accessibility Nexus, which is an accessibility review site. Again, like I mentioned with the Can I Play That, giving people the information they need to make informed purchase decisions about their games. So that's joining Can I Play That, Dega System, and Game Critics, and other smaller sites as well in providing that really essential function for the gaming community. This is something kind of similar. This is the Family Video Game Database that launched this year. This has a slightly different emphasis. Its primary function is providing information for parents on suitability of games for their young families. But as part of that, they include a ton of accessibility information. This is populated by the guy who runs the site, and he also has a small army of accessibility helpers who are helping out with that information as well. Something similar but slightly different. Again, this is listing accessibility considerations that are present in games, but this information is populated by developers themselves. So this is back to Stadia again. This is the Stadia storefront. So every game on the Stadia storefront has an accessibility section giving information about what accessibility options are present in the game. This is something that there has been a little bit of before. Itch has, for a couple of years, had a bunch of accessibility filters. So basically developers tick some boxes to say what kind of considerations are in their games. And the listings of games on the Itch website can actually be filtered by those accessibility options. Also, Steam has done something similar as well in a very limited way. There was actually a change.org petition a few years back by a woman in the UK saying that she's deaf and she has no idea whether or not games on the store are going to be accessible to her. So the petition was successful. Actually within a matter of weeks, Steam had implemented tick boxes for developers to say whether their game includes subtitles and captions, and those filters, those checkboxes made their way through into filters. So if you're browsing games on Steam, you can filter it to only show games that have subtitles in your language. But this across all games on the Stadia storefront is really nice, and I hope that again this can help drive conversations and be something that we'll see more of in future. So that previous example was just in the form of kind of bullet points. Something that we've seen a lot of in the past year is studios publishing more information than that about accessibility, proper deep dives on the kind of considerations that are in the game. And this was something that really got up and running in the previous year. We're starting to see studios publishing this kind of information and directly giving players, like I said, the information they need to make informed purchase decisions. What has changed this year, though, has been the stage at which this information is being shared. There have been a bunch of games that have been sharing this information quite a long time before the game launches. Like this, Phoenix Rising, they published this information a couple of weeks ago, like 3 months before the game came out. That is really, really important. It's important if you're valuing disabled players in the same way as all your other players, who you want to be hyped about your game. You want to bring them on that journey of excitement up to release. Having this kind of information so that people actually know that if the game is even playable is pretty important in knowing whether you should be excited about the game. And part of that initial pre-release journey and hype and excitement is video. And traditionally in the games industry, accessibility of video has extended to subtitles or maybe captions if you're lucky. Elsewhere, it's a different story. In TV, in film, there is a standard consideration called audio description. So this is basically an alternative audio track that uses gaps in the dialogue to insert a narrator describing verbally what is happening visually. So this is obviously of great use for people who are blind, also people with low vision, also people with various cognitive impairments who benefit from that extra reinforcement and explanation of what's happening. And this year, this is largely due to the efforts of one person actually, Sightless Combat, who you're going to see on a panel as part of this conference. He gave a couple of really, really good presentations on audio description at a couple of different events. And that has spurred on efforts by both Microsoft and Ubisoft in particular. They both put out a whole bunch of game trailers with audio description. Some of these games aren't particularly blind accessible, so I've seen that spur the question quite often of why would you audio describe a trailer for a game that isn't accessible? And the answer to that is all games are blind accessible. It's just a question of how blind accessible, of how much independent play is possible versus playing with assistance, or even as often happens at the moment, somebody actually having to just sit there and watch somebody else play and have it described to them. So that is one reason that basically any game can have some degree of blind player base. Another reason is a practical one, that by thinking about like a quick win, like applying it to a video, you're actually building that knowledge and expertise and workflow and process, so that as games themselves become more blind accessible, you're in a better position to implement this kind of functionality in your game for cutscenes and that kind of stuff. And also, it's always worth thinking about just the statement that it gives, well, what kind of feeling it gives to people of inclusion and being equally valued as players. Next up, events. There have been a whole bunch of nice game jams this year. There was the VR Accessibility Jam, there was Blind Jam, and this is the Crater Summer Jam. Crater is a like easy to use game development framework, and the person who won the Crater Summer Jam is someone who's actually been up on the screen at a previous conference. So if anyone watching either was present for or has watched the talks from the Paris edition of the conference, there was a talk there about iMine, which is Minecraft interface designed to be controlled through eye gaze. And The young girl in that who was driving the feature development and helping with the development with that, a girl called Becky, she actually won the Creator Game Jam. So that young girl from a couple of years ago is now actually a budding game developer who won the Game Jam. So this game was developed solely through using iGaze. But as far as game jams go, the daddy of them all really is Global Game Jam. Global Game Jam every year, including this year, has a whole set of optional accessibility criteria which were taken up by tens of thousands of developers, often developers in formative years. So students or people early in their careers who are taking away valuable lessons about just how much value can be brought, even just in the context of like a 2-day game jam. But this year they went beyond that. They introduced the Accessibility Fund. So they had a whole bunch of generous donors donating cash, which could then be sent out to the physical Global Game Jam venues. They could then use that money to improve the accessibility of their venue to disabled participants. And that consideration of physical accessibility of venues has been something that the earlier part of the year was seeing a lot of. That continued. We saw a lot of it last year, and it continued into this year. Things like booths at conventions and that kind of stuff. And that's translated across into as we move further into this year, as those kind of events have moved online. So events like this, like Ubisoft Forward, with things like ASL sign language, live captioning, audio description, and something here actually was really nice to see was preview builds of the games that were being demonstrated were actually sent out to disabled gamers, disabled influencers, like the review sites that I was mentioning as well, so that those people can actually have that discussion, that dialogue with their communities about what these games have to offer. And again, like I was saying, bring along all of the gaming community along in that excitement and the hype for the releases. And this is really hot off the press. This was just a couple of days ago. The Game Awards. The Game Awards have announced that for this year they are adding a new category for innovation in accessibility. There have been some other industry awards that have included recognition for accessibility, like the Tiger Awards in the UK and the Australian Game Developer Awards. But this is a whole different scale. I think last year they had something in the region of 50 million viewers. And I mean, this year we're all stuck at home with not much better to do than watch stuff on the screen, so I won't be surprised if those viewing figures go up again. So this is a whole different ballgame. And obviously it is fantastic to be able to recognise and reward developers who are doing good work. But it's also, especially when you're talking about these kind of viewing figures, a really incredible opportunity for awareness raising. Awareness raising throughout the gamer community about what accessibility stuff is out there and what the value of it is. And also just again, it's a similar thing to what I've been talking about so far, just putting out that statement of value to disabled gamers, saying, you know, we recognize you equally as consumers and as people. So that brings me on to games. I'm going to cheat a little bit here and read off a list. So the game that has got the attention this year, rightly so, has been The Last of Us 2. They've done a ton of lovely stuff, but it hasn't all been about that game. Here is a quick roll call of just a few. This is not exhaustive at all, just a few of the games that have also been doing really nice stuff. Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Minecraft Edu, Jedi Fallen Order, Vacation Simulator, Lost Ember, Hyperdot, Trine 4, Cook Serve Delicious 3, Dreams, Scourgebringer, Veritas, Path of Giants, Zombie Army 4, Darksiders Genesis, Bleeding Edge, Moving Out, Doom Eternal, Lair of the Clockwork God, Freedom Finger, Half-Life Alyx, Predator Hunting Grounds, Gears Tactics, Minecraft Dungeons, Before I Forget, Sea of Thieves, Space Wave Race, Jet Lancer, Wildfire, Destiny 2, Last of Us 2, Chicken Police, Boots on the Moon, Hades, Sento Showdown, Spin Rhythm, Paradise Killer, Overcooked, Ghost of Tsushima, Grounded, Hyperscape, Avengers, Control, Untold, Tell Me Why, Phoenotopia, Wasteland 3, Going Under, X-Days, Scarlet Hollow, Tony Hawk's. Like I said, that's not even comprehensive, but just to be able to see a list of that, like compared to where things were just a few years ago, that is incredible. To be able to see just so many people from every corner of the industry and putting so much passion into inclusion in their games. But like I said, Last of Us 2 has been getting a lot of recognition. They've done some fantastic stuff, and they've been quite open about how they did it as well. Their secret sauce was just thinking about accessibility early, because they, in their previous game Uncharted 4, they did some cool stuff, but it was the same kind of situation you see with a lot of developers, which is kind of like a few people in a company starting to do something late in development, and they always have the same reaction, which is, oh my god, if only we thought about this earlier, we could have done so much more, it would have been so much easier, we could have done it so much better. And that's what happened. When they had that realization, they were in the early stages of development for Last of Us 2, and that's what allowed them to do what they could do. And that's something that is now happening. We're seeing a lot of other studios who are in that situation, who are now on that, that second wave of accessibility, and The Last of Us 2 is an early standard bearer for that wave. So there's going to be a load of really, really nice things to come over the coming year. And all this work is possible because of people. Traditionally, that has always been in the past a case of kind of external advocates and people working internally who don't have any kind of responsibility for accessibility. They already have, like a full-time job. I'm sure this is going to sound very familiar for a lot of people watching. Already have a full-time job, already got a load of other stuff to do, but like trying to angle accessibility in there as well. That's been starting to change. There have been a number of roles created over the past couple of years. It's now up to, I think, around about 30 people across the industry who are in full-time, permanent, in-house accessibility roles, including these companies have all hired people over the past year. And what has been really, really nice to see is the dawn, really, of actual, like, advertised jobs in accessibility. So I think up until this year, there had been one example anywhere in the industry of a job that had actually been advertised in accessibility, and that was the role at Xbox that Brandon Zahand is now in. This year, we've also seen advertised roles from Ubisoft, the role that Cherry Thompson is now in, at Riot, which Enid just started in a couple of weeks ago, and the biggie Unity. Unity didn't advertise a role in accessibility, they advertised for a whole team. And that team is being set up to look at accessibility in two different areas. One of them is actually looking at accessibility of the Unity editor itself, so making Unity more accessible to disabled developers. The other side of it is working on tools to allow developers to have an easier time of implementing accessibility, where the engine might be able to do some of that heavy lifting, like the things I was mentioning earlier, like the remapping and the text-to-speech support. And again, I'm going to say the same thing again. There are people from Unity participating in this conference here on Discord, and they have an open call out wanting to hear from developers about what they can do in either of those two areas. So if you have thoughts on either of those things, please hit them up. So I think that's a nice positive note to end things on. I think hopefully what you can see from what I've been talking about is that we now have a good solid foundation. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We are still a long way from where accessibility needs to be. We're still a long way from a point where a gamer can pick up any given game and have a reasonable expectation that even the basic stuff like subtitling, text size, remapping, effects intensity have been considered. We're still not yet at the point where I don't think I've ever even seen a single AAA game that has managed to hit those basics. We're very close though, very, very close. So I don't doubt for a second that this coming year is going to be the year that we hit that point, and that's when I'm going to do my genuine happy dance. But yeah, so we have a long way to go, but the ingredients are all in place. All the stuff we've been seeing, we've got a really, really strong foundation to build upon. And hopefully the kind of stuff that you're going to see over the coming 2 days is going to help you be part of that wave and to help drive the industry onto an ever better place. Thanks.